Welcome back to Rand on Real Estate. I'm Greg Rand, your host on 77 WABC and WABCRadio.com. We've been talking about the nature of the business world right now, the nature of the free market versus government, and how there's a tipping point that I believe we've reached. I feel it in my heart, and I listen to my heart when I feel things like this. And I want to share with you why I believed we've crossed over to the other side of this recession just this fall. Now, for a quick rewind, I've talked on this show a lot about the Great Depression, the comparisons between today's recession and the Great Depression are numerous. You hear about it all the time. And I actually wrote a book that's coming out in March called Crash Boom, which the first half of the book is a comparison of the Great Depression and the Great Recession, what the similarities are, and probably the most important thing, the thing that struck me as the most profound thing that I learned from researching this, which, by the way, included talking to a lot of people who actually lived through it, was the fact that there was an economic force that started the Great Depression and then continued and protracted it, but it was the emotional and psychological impact on the people that kept that thing going on for more than a decade. And that's the thing that interests me the most, because human nature and consumer confidence, these are such important things that they get messed with all the time in the media. They get messed with by government. And where we find ourselves today is in a place where there are a lot of people who are having a hard time believing that it's ever going to get better. They see a sign of something positive, and they're just not sure. And I talked in the last segment about how, as a business owner, the government's interference in the private sector and the government's opinion of businesses that seems to be very negative, and their willingness to reach across into the business sector and control and regulate and even demonize people in the private sector spooked me. And I don't get spooked very easily, but I got a little bit nervous because I saw how they messed up the mortgage banking industry by bastardizing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in the last 10 years. I see how they're continuing to mess up the housing market by tinkering with the foreclosure situation, not allowing that to proceed. And so it gets you very nervous. And what happened in the election in November, okay, the midterm elections where Republicans swept the House, I do not see that as being a big Republican win, even though technically it was. I don't feel that that was the important thing in that election. I don't feel like it was a big referendum against President Obama's agenda, even though technically that might be true also. The most important part of that is that the productive people of this country yanked on the leash of Washington. They yanked on the leash and they left scars. The debate happening this week about how the president has now approved the extension of the tax rates that Bush put in place and how his own party's mad at him, that is so healthy to see. And to me, what it basically said was, you can demonize us in the private sector, but we actually, the people who make this country work, it turns out that we actually run it, after all. Okay, if we're asleep at the switch, then somebody else can take over and run it. But when we get woken up and we realize that we don't like where it's going, we can yank on that leash and we can tell Washington, remind them who really runs the show around here. And that's what we did. And that was an incredibly empowering thing for a lot of people. I went out the week of the election, and again, I don't want to make this a political statement. Even though I was in favor of Republicans winning, I'm a Republican. That's not the point. The point was, it was run amok, okay? There was a couple of years worth of policies being put in place that I might not agree with, but it was the insults that came with them. It was the insult of signing health care without reading it. It was the insult of then exempting unions from health care. It was the insult of the Congress playing the greatest role of the housing crisis because of what they did by loosening lending standards in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We talked a lot about that here. They are the ones who got the ball rolling on the housing crisis, and then they sit in judgment of the lenders and everybody in the industry. It's an insult. It's the kind of thing like, we've played clips on this show of people like Barney Frank saying one thing and then saying the exact opposite, just lying through his teeth on camera like, we're too stupid to know the difference. That we're too dumb to actually play the clips back to back and see that the guy's not being honest. That mounting insult was reversed. We yanked on the leash and we left scars on them, and they're now realizing they can't get away with this stuff. And to me, that's a tipping point. The Great Depression ended when we won World War II. It wasn't fighting World War II that ended it, and it wasn't building tanks and trucks for World War II, which a lot of historians say that was the reason why the Depression ended, is that all the government spending to support the war effort. That was not it. Not if you speak to people who actually lived through it. They will tell you that coming back from the war victorious is what ended it. They forgot about their pessimism. It just wiped it away. They won. They beat Hitler. They won. And they came back, and 75 years of prosperity is what ensued after that was over. That was a major, major economic downturn. Makes what we have right now look like child's play. But that was a major tipping point, winning World War II. I've had my radar up looking for what could be our tipping point. What could be the thing? It's not going to be a good employment report. It's not going to be a good GDP report. It's not going to be a good housing report. Something bigger has to happen to ignite a spark and to make people, you hear a lot about how businesses have trillions of dollars on the sidelines, right? That's talked about a lot. Banks have money on the sidelines. Businesses are sitting on cash. People with money are sitting on it. Well, the reason why they're sitting on it is they're not sure if they're going to need it. They're not sure what the next shoe that's going to drop, that's going to come out of Washington, is going to say, okay, well, we're going to tax you higher, or we're going to, the state of California is going bankrupt, so we're going to go ahead and bail it out. We just don't know what next madness is going to be coming out of Washington that's going to bleed us dry, so we're keeping our powder dry. But now we just won that election by virtue of the sheer power of our independence.
You're talking a little bit about the psychology and how that is really the determining factor of up or down. What would it take? You said winning the war, and you said we don't have something like that right now, but what would it take? I mean, what scenario are you thinking about that would actually turn it around?
That election and what has happened since, that to me is the best thing we have. There's nothing on the horizon that I can see. Unemployment going from 10% to 5% would be great. Not going to happen overnight. One company putting out a great earnings report, not going to happen. Even a stock market jump is not going to do it. But the election, which again was not Republicans beating Democrats. Republicans weren't all that popular during this whole thing. It was the productive people of the country. Listen, there are a lot of people who make fun of the Tea Party. I watched those Tea Party rallies, okay? They were people that took a day off of work to go out and do that. Those were regular, everyday folks who said, enough is enough. And there's something beautiful about a quiet revolution like that of saying, we like the way the country is when it's going well, and we're taking control back. The extension of those tax cuts, not all that meaningful. They're not cutting taxes. They're just keeping the tax rates where they were. Mm-hmm. That is not going to by itself have any impact on the economy, in my opinion. But what is the fact that as a business, I hired people that week. Okay? I hired 2 people the week that the election swung because I felt like the target was off my back. The target's on their back now in Washington. And you get this extension of the tax cuts was the first act of the people, the productive people of this country, the first act of exerting their power now that they've taken back some part of the federal government. And you're going to see more and more and more of that going forward. And so I'm encouraging businesses, everybody that I talk to, and I use this opportunity, being at a microphone, to encourage people, if you have money on the sidelines, get it off the sidelines. If you're a business person who feels like I've been feeling, which is a little bit scared of the fact that I'm in the crosshairs are off, that nobody's got a gun pointed at me anymore. And I want us to show everybody in the country, everybody in the middle class, that it wasn't about the rich getting richer. This tax rate extension wasn't about the rich getting richer. We don't care about a couple of points in taxes. What we care about is stability in our ability to be able to grow our businesses. And if we can all in unison go out there and start investing and growing and spending and hiring again, we can show that we actually are the ones who solve these kind of problems.
That's right. And it's us. It's not them.
That's right.
Exciting. What's coming up?
Well, what's coming up is we have a discussion going on about the Debt Commission's recommendation to change the mortgage interest tax deduction. And a lot of people are saying that's going to kill the housing market. And I have an opinion on that, so let me share that with you. Plus, we're going to talk to somebody in Southwest Florida in our real estate deep dive, talk about a place that a lot of money is being made by people with vision and courage. So stay with us. Rand on Real Estate on 77 WABC.